economic system that is benefiting them at the expense of everybody else. And I don't think that's going to be hard for the mass of people to figure out. And they're going to realize, uh-oh, we don't just have to contest about the power. We have to do something about the economic institutions out of which this power problem occurs to us.
So
for me, in a sense, let me just conclude. Sure. The class issue goes at the core to the organization of production. You can't continue to have the mass of people producing a profit in the hands of a tiny group of people, because they'll continue to use that in the ways that disadvantage the mass of people. If you don't change that, even if you were able to conduct a political struggle, and even if you were able to win it, the way the mass of people were in the Great Depression, by creating Social Security, unemployment insurance, and federal jobs programs, then the institutions of private enterprise will undo it once you're done, and you're back to square one. You have to learn the lesson.
So we're seeing essentially a new cycle of movements spreading around the world. Right. Was really started in the 1990s in Latin America and swept through Asia and Europe and the Middle East, and now it's come to the United States. In the last few minutes that we have, how can we take this as an opportunity to address those very issues of who owns, who runs the economy, who makes the decisions? Some of the things you've talked about is essentially democratic control of work by workers.
Right.
How do we use this as an opportunity to broach this issue and actually make those kinds of changes that we need? A kind of future in the present, as C.L. James called it.
I think that we have to face what the enormity of our task is. We have to undo the institutions that govern our economic system, private enterprise, corporate, all of those have to be made subject to criticism, subject to debate. We have to explore the alternatives, namely workers running their own enterprises. Those have to be put on the table. We have to demand the rights and the supports for those kinds of enterprises to get off the ground so people can see what it's like to work in an enterprise where you're not told what to do by an undemocratic leadership at the top, et cetera, et cetera. We have to be open to do that. I think the mass of the American people are very interested that the failure of the capitalist system for them and for their children is palpable. We will find ourselves able to build new organizations, to learn from the old ones so that we don't repeat their mistakes, that is, don't do what they did that didn't work, but do what they did that did work. Let's remember, whatever our criticisms of the CIO, the socialists, and the communists, they were able to get things done for the mass of people in the 1930s that we have not yet replicated. We miss their absence, and we have to form new organizations. And that's only done when people get together and are determined to do it. And the American people have the desire, they have the skills, they have the tools.
One of the big stories that's been missing about the Occupy movement that's fascinating for me, and I actually brought my daughter to see this in Oakland, was that it's not just a protest. It's actually constructing what a society in which takes care of all the needs, not just the Maslow types of hierarchy of needs of food and shelter, but also the other needs of setting up libraries, of having a kind of university in the open. In what ways is the Occupy movement such a threat? Because it does that, because it gives us a glimpse of what our future could be like.
Yes, and I think it gives us mostly the glimpse that when people share a critical perspective and get together, there's almost no limit to what they can do. I mean, the Occupy movement is an absolute phenomenon. It begins in September, and by November, it is the #1 news story across this country, in which perspectives that have been marginalized become part of the mainstream, in which everybody thinks in terms of 1% versus 99%. These are perspectives that were marginal at best a few months earlier and become mainstream literally overnight. Whatever you think about the power of the Occupy movement, that tells you that the soil is very fertile, that the interest of masses of people, even those who disagree, is captured by the way this movement responds to what is happening. The biggest organizer of the left has always been a capitalism that doesn't function and doesn't know how to fix itself.
Well,
thank you very much.
Pleasure talking to you. It's great to hear you in person, and I'm sure I'll be hearing